here, Revelation chapter 7. Great picture of what heaven is going to be like this morning. John writes this. It says, after this I saw four angels standing the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth, that no wind might blow on earth or sea or against any tree. Saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun with the seal of the living God, and he called out with a loud voice to the four angels who had been given power to harm earth and sea, saying, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah were sealed, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Gad, 12,000 from the tribe of Asher, 12,000 from the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 from the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 from the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 from the tribe of Levi, 12,000 from the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 from the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 from the tribe of Joseph, and 12,000 from Benjamin were sealed. And after this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all the tribes and people and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne, and they worshiped God, saying, amen, blessings and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be on our God forever and ever, amen. And one of the elders addressed me, saying, who are these clothed in white robes, and from where have they come? I said to him, sir, you know. And he said to me, these are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple, and he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. And they shall no longer hunger no more, neither thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in their midst of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of living water. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Wish I could have been there. President John F. Kennedy was before Congress in 1961. And as he gathered Congress together, he told them in the next decade he wanted to land somebody on the moon. And I wish you knew how crazy this ask actually was. I wish you knew how crazy of a vision this actually was going to be. Because at the time, we only put somebody into space for 15 minutes. And that wasn't really into space, it was a suborbital kind of flight. And now what John F. Kennedy was saying, he wanted somebody to launch from this earth, go into, retrofire into lunar orbit, come off a lunar orbit, go down in a different direction off his ship, land on the moon, then take off again, enter into Earth's atmosphere, and be safe. His vision was moving from 15 minutes into 2 weeks, having the shuttle do different things, different directions. And he was asking the people to buy it. I imagine the country was excited at first. Every vision brings excitement at the beginning until the people realize the cost. Every vision comes with a cost. There's sacrifices that we need to make. There's a cost to a vision. And what was going to allow this vision of landing a man on a moon meant the nation had to come together, consider the cost, consider the sacrifices, and saying, we're all in. We're willing to pay the cost, the sacrifices. And let me tell you, the cost of landing somebody on the moon was enormous. In today's money, it would have been $257 billion our nation spent on putting somebody on the moon. 400,000 workers for an entire decade gave their lives for this mission. 3 people gave the ultimate sacrifice. They ended up dying for this mission as well. And we can debate whether that cost was necessary to put somebody on the moon. But what we can't debate about is the nation at the time considered it important. And because they said, we're all in, they were able to reach heights that nobody thought was possible. They were able to achieve something that everybody thought was never going to take place. They landed somebody on the moon. As I think of that vision, this Apollos mission, yes, crazy, but nothing compared to the vision we see in Revelation chapter 7. Nothing compared to the mission that Jesus has given his church. A mission to ensure that every nation hears the gospel. That every single tribe, tongue, and nation would hear this good message so they can experience heaven. That's what he's calling his church to do, to take the Great Commission seriously. And I ask you this morning, have you ever considered the cost of what it would mean for his church to buy into this mission and give it everything we have? Have you considered the sacrifice it would mean for us to be able to reach every tribe, tongue, and nation? To be a place that is a family where you can see different people of different colors of skin coming together to worship in unity. This morning, I want to talk to you on the topic of God's multicolored, multi-ethnic, cultured church. The question I ask you is, are you willing to be all in to make it a reality? Because we turn into chapter 7, we're able to take a deep breath. Man, for the couple last weeks, we've seen some judgment and some hard verses and passages, but this morning you're able to just rest a little bit. Because John takes us into the throne room once again and shows us a picture of heaven that's breathtaking. But we need to remember what took place and how all these chapters kind of mend together. As you're looking at chapter 6, we saw at the end of it the question, who can stand? Chapter 6 was all about God's judgment. We saw earthquakes. We saw the moon turn to blood. We saw the sun disappear. We saw this earth roll into scrolls. And the question everybody was asking is, who can stand? People were begging the question, who can stand this judgment? And so much so that they would say, hey, we'd rather have rocks fall on our heads than be able to stand the judgment of the Lamb. Who can stand? Revelation chapter 7 answers that question for us. Who can stand? Who can stand God's judgment? And the answer is found in Revelation chapter 7. It's the church. The church is the one who's able to withstand God's judgment. It's the church that's covered by his presence. He wraps his arms around it. As we know through the gospel, Jesus took judgment upon himself. Who can stand? The answer is the church. But this morning we're going to see something different. As John gives this vision, he sees the church something very different than he probably imagined it to be. The way we know that's the case is because John is doing something similar to what he did in Revelation chapter 5. Remember, Revelation chapter 5, what John hears is very different than what he sees. Same thing takes place in Revelation chapter 7. What he hears is very different than what he sees. Remember in Revelation chapter 5, what did we see? We saw the lion from the tribe of Judah, the conquering one, the root of Jesse coming in. And this was this picture. And what they probably imagined that Jesus' kingdom was coming to take place. Right? He hears this conquering king coming, but notice what he sees. He sees the lamb that was slain. Jesus is both. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah, but yet he's the Lamb that was slain. But it's in this contrast of what he hears and what he sees that reminds us that John is seeing or expecting something different to take place than what Jesus is showing him. And the same thing takes place in our text. He sees or he hears something very different than he sees when it comes to the church. And it's this contrast of images that we see in Revelation chapter 7 that's telling us there's something different taking place in this book. What their expectations are is going to be very different than what Jesus ushers in reality. Notice what we see first, or rather what he's told. He's told that there's a group of 144,000. A group of 144,000. Many people are confused of what this means. Many people debate what this number is. Some people believe this is ethnic Israel coming back into, as Romans 9, 10, and 11 would say. But I think there's something different going on here. I think it's a symbolic number. Apocalyptic language uses these numbers in symbolic, in symbolism. It uses these symbolic pictures to get us to understand what's taking place. And I believe this is what's taking place with this number. I know the math is going to seem crazy to you, but at first glance, but once you understand what's going on, I think it's going to make sense. We see the number 144,000. If you take those 24 elders, the angels that we said, you have 12 for the 12 tribes of Israel, and then you have 12 of the disciples. You take 12, so it's showing the complete church, or rather, it's showing the complete people of God, the old Israel in the church. So this number of 24 is important. So you take 12 and 12, you take these two numbers and you multiply them. What do you get? You get 144. Then you take the number of completeness, which was 1,000 or 10, and you begin to take this number, and it turns out to be 144,000. I know math seems a little crazy, but I think we would all agree with that would be the case if we didn't see what followed it, the tribes of Israel. But notice as we're looking at the tribes listed in this picture, there's going to be things that stand out to us that just don't make sense, but shows us that it's probably not ethnic Israel that's represented in this number. Rather, it's the whole entire people of God. The reason we know that to be the case is that you're looking at verses 5 through 8, what do we see? We first see that Judah is listed first. If you understand Old Testament history, you understand that Judah is not the oldest tribe. Reuben is actually listed after Judah, and Reuben is older. So what's taking place? Why would Judah be listed first? Obviously, to put the emphasis back on Jesus. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And it's trying to get us to see that Jesus now becomes the link of this group that we see in this picture. Jesus is the one who connects them all together. In fact, as you're looking at this picture, the second thing we understand is notice how they're all listed out, 12,000 of each and every tribe. Man, if you're a Jew or a first century Christian, you understand that this book is probably written in about AD 92. So the fall of Jerusalem was already taken place. And with the temple being destroyed, all the historical evidence of matching tribes and making sure that each tribe was of the certain tribe is disappeared, which meaning they begin to intermingle after that. Specifically, when you saw Israel disappear and then come back. So how could this be exactly 12,000 from this tribe and this tribe if they don't have any genealogy or genealogical records? We understood that Mary and Joseph, because the temple was still there, they're able to trace their line back to David. But after the temple was destroyed, it was incredibly hard. So we saw intermarriage take place. So tribal purity began to disappear. So when we're looking at this 12,000 number, it's telling us something else is going on, and there is. And this is where it goes back to Jesus. Because if we're looking at two different passages, if you look at Isaiah 5, Psalm chapter 80, we see that Israel is called the vine. Israel is supposed to be the one who produced fruit, the one who are supposed to be grafted into the family of God, but they failed in producing fruit, so somebody had to come after them and fulfill that. And who is that? Jesus. Jesus becomes the true vine, John 15. The way that we're grafted now into the family of God is faith in Jesus Christ. So notice at the beginning, we see that he's the one who connects these families together, and he's the one we're grafted into, so we see Jesus being the center of it all. The last thing we see is there's this picture of 12,000 and 12,000 and 12,000 and 12,000. It seems to be 12 battalions coming together to march and get ready for war. Notice the similarities between that first vision of Revelation chapter 5 of Jesus, of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the conquering one. It seems to be what we're expecting is Jesus to come in, usher his kingdom in, and destroy Rome. I imagine that's the expectation of these first century Christians still. So what are they imagining? They're imagining a text like this, 12,000, 12,000, 12,000. It seems like the church is getting ready to go and conquer, to take over Rome. In fact, as you're looking at the Old Testament passages where they're doing this again and taking the census of the tribes, they are getting their people ready for battle to take over the promised land. So we see this strong image, or rather we hear this strong image. But notice what we see is something completely different. Verse 9, after this I looked, and catch what he sees, and behold, a great multitude that nobody could number from every tribe, tongue, and nation, from all the tribes and all the peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They don't have any weapons, rather they're clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands. So notice the contrast of images. We don't see an image of ethnic Israel here. We see a picture of people from every tribe, tongue, and nation. We see a different group, a group that's so vast in numbers. So notice the differences as we're just making our way through the text. The number is different. We move from 144 to a countless number. A number that can't even be numbered. So as John's looking out and seeing the church, what does he see? He sees God's power to redeem people from every nation. His power to redeem and save and pour out his grace on so many different people that heaven is so crowded that they can't even count them. That's his power to save the nations. You're seeing a number so vast in heaven, it's beautiful. And notice the encouragement that would be written to these first century readers. They're in the persecuted church. The question they're asking is this thing going to last? Is Rome going to snuff out the church and the church is going to end? And yet Jesus says, no, I'm not done. I'm the sovereign one who is on the throne. I'm the one who is saving the nations to a point in which I'm going to save so many people. The church is going to be so large that when you see it in heaven, you won't even be able to count them. Does that amaze you? Do you stand in awe of that reality? That you look out on this world today and you see so much hurt and your pain, but you see a God redeeming it all. A God transforming hearts, knitting us together to become a family. It's a beautiful picture. It's a picture that you just have to stand in awe of. It's not just the number, it's the ethnic makeup. It's a diverse group. John looks out and he sees a multicolored church. Notice what he's seen. How diverse, you ask. It says every tribe, tongue, and nation. So ask the question, how many different tribal groups are in the world? Well, if you look at the Joshua Project, you begin to understand how many different groups are in this world today. 17,559. 17,559 different makeups of people, different shades of color, different cultures, speaking different languages, and God is redeeming them all. Do you see that picture? He's looking out and he's seeing color. He's seeing a mosaic picture of the church. This is what it's going to look like. It's this picture of every tribe, tongue, and nation, which is so crazy. Because if you're looking out at this number and you're looking at heaven, these are tribal groups who used to fight together, who don't like each other, who've had history of war after war after war, but notice they are all in unity, praising the one who saved them all. Salvation belongs to the Lord. That's the picture of heaven. David Platt, just this past week, he was telling the story of his church and how he's sitting at a table. And at this table next to him is this Afghan man. Next to the Afghan man is this Iranian. Next to the Iranian is a person from South Korea. Next to that person is a person from South Asia. And as they're sitting at this table, the Afghan man says, man, I used to volunteer to be a part of killing Americans. I wanted to join the force to take out Americans. The Iranian says, well, true story. He says, I joined the force to join the Iranian forces to take out the Taliban, the exact group that you were trying to join. And here's these two groups now, sitting at a table, not fighting, family, by the blood of Jesus Christ. Sitting at a table of fellowship, of friendship, encouraging one another, praying for each other, being unified because they are the family of God. That's heaven. Question I ask you this morning is, what does it take for us to get on board with that mission? To say we don't want to wait for heaven, to taste the beauty of heaven. We want to experience it here and now, in this place, in this gym, in Moore County. What does it take for us, our hearts, to long for that peace as we pray in the Lord's Prayer? As it is in heaven, let it be on this earth. What are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to give so that we can make that reality here? That we would take the Great Commission so seriously that we say this is a worthy cause to give our lives for. You know how that happens? Happens when a group of people like us say we're all in. Summit Church and RDU has this phrase that they use. They say, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Man, we're willing to do whatever it takes to see people see Jesus and come into this place and be part of the family of God. Whatever it takes. See, this is the picture of heaven. The question I ask you is, you ever seen this idea of cross-cultural relationships being essential to disciple making? Because if the early church is seeing this picture on paper, notice what they're seeing. Man, they're hearing this story about God, and he says he wants to make them go out and make disciples of all nations. And as they're hearing this story, they're a bunch of Jews. So to make disciples of all nations, immediately what do? They have to cross cultures. So for a first century believer, specifically disciples, they understood that the essential part of their disciple making was going to be cross-cultural. And here's the thing, they didn't have to get on a plane to do it. All they needed to do was cross the road, begin to love the Romans with the love of Christ. All they had to do is find a Gentile and love them with the love of Christ and share the good news of Jesus Christ. All they had to do is find a Samaritan and share the good news with the love of Jesus Christ. And here's the thing for us, the same thing applies to us as well. I think sometimes when you hear this Great Commission, we automatically think, I got to go on a plane. And yes, there's an aspect to that. But the great news of being living in this country is the nations have been brought to us. That all you have to do is say, I am willing to do whatever it takes. And that might mean that you simply just have to go to a different neighborhood here in Moore County and befriend it. Simply looks like you going into a restaurant of somebody who looks of a different color and saying, yes, I want to love you with the love of Christ so that you can see Jesus in my life. What is it going to take for us to see this picture of heaven and say, we want to taste it here on earth? Because this should be a vision of the church of Jesus Christ. Because God's plan is only moving in one direction. It's moving to this picture in Revelation chapter 7, where you see people of every tribe, tongue, and nation coming together to worship the King. Do you want to taste heaven? Here in this place. That we would give our lives for this. Because this is what heaven is going to be like. Not only do we see a church that's vastly different, a group that is a number so big that he can't count it, a color that's so mosaic in its picture of different tints and different colors, because he saves them all, but yet united together. Second thing we see in this text is here is the protection of God's people. God is the one who protects them all. This is the church. Yes, the church is multicolored and multicultural, but secondly, we see in heaven, the church is protected by God's judgment. Because if you're looking at verses 1 through 3, what do we see? We see these angels on the corners of the earth, and another angel comes to these angels and says, hold out. We don't want judgment yet. You got to refrain from judgment. And notice what we see in verse 3, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And immediately we're introduced to the mark of the Lamb. Mark of the Lamb is going to be important. We're going to see it again in Revelation chapter 14. And the reason I bring it up here is because in Revelation chapter 14, what we're sometimes more interested in is the mark of the beast. And the mark of the Lamb, the mark of the beast are going to be very similar. I want to suggest to you this morning as we're looking at this passage, again, it's a symbolic mark. I know many people would say that this mark of the beast would be a literal physical mark, whether it's the QR code some people have said or whatever it might be. I want to suggest to you that in apocalyptic language, again, it's a figurative no. And the reason we know that to be the case, at least for the lamb, the mark of the Lamb, is notice in the passage, you just mark your way through. How are they protected from judgment? Verse 15. What do we see? That God would shelter them from His presence. He would guide us in springs of living water. He would take us to a place where there would be no more hunger, a place where there would be no more pain, and in which He would wipe the tears from our eyes. Is that not a picture of heaven? In fact, He's just using language from Ezekiel chapter 9, in which the angels were marked on their face, and He would protect them from judgment over Israel. And that wasn't a physical mark. So we see in this passage, what is it looking? He's protecting His people. So I believe in the same sense, the mark of the beast would be symbolic as well. And the question He's asking is this: whose mark do you want? Because you're going to belong to one of these groups. You're going to belong to the beast, the ways of the world, or are you going to belong to the Lamb? And depending on which group you belong to, the question is, what wrath do you want? Notice who he's writing to again. He's writing to a church who's being persecuted. So they're saying, let's cozy up to the beast, because we don't want to experience the wrath of the beast, persecution. So what we're going to say is we're going to cozy up to the beast so we don't have to experience his wrath. We're going to worship your emperor. We're going to go with your worldview. We're going to lie and not point out your sin. We're just going to cozy up to you so then therefore we can be shielded from the wrath of the beast. And what does Jesus say in this passage? Not so fast. Because he says when you cozy up to the beast, yes, you're shielded from the wrath of the beast, but you're going to have to experience the wrath of the Lamb. And the question he's asking the church is, what wrath do you want? You're going to belong to one group. So you can cozy up to the beast. As this world gets worse, we're going to see more and more people begin to cozy up to the beast. We're not going to point out the beast is sin. We're going to cozy up to them so we don't have to experience their wrath, whether it's whatever it might be. And Jesus is saying, what wrath do you want? You want the temporary wrath of the beast? Or do you want to experience the eternal wrath of the Lamb? And you see the faithfulness of the church, the blessing. He says, when you belong to the Lamb, what do you get? You get shielded from the wrath of the Lamb, which is far worse. So he's saying, be faithful, church. He's saying, experience. Yes, in your faithfulness, stick to the word. Yes, you will experience the wrath of the beast. But he's saying it's far better to experience the temporary wrath of the beast than the wrath of the Lamb. The question Revelation is asking his church is, what wrath do you want to experience? What group do you want to belong to? When you belong to the church, yes, you will experience some hardship, some persecution, some tribulation, but you're shielded from the wrath of the Lamb. And one day soon we'll be in a place where there will be no more tears. We'll be in a place in which God will become our shepherd and he will lead us to living waters. He leads us to this place where there will be no more pain. So yes, we see a picture of this church that's different than what we would expect. It's multicolored. Then he leads us to a place where he sees the church is covered in judgment. Lastly, we see a place, a people group, a church that understands they can't take pride for themselves, but rather glory is given to God. Verse 9 and 10, clothed in white robes, here's the church with palm branches in their hands and crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. As you're looking at these groups of individuals, we ask the question, how are they able to get along? 17,559 people groups, how are they able to be in unison and not fight with each other? Yes, the answer is the power of the gospel to transform our hearts, but there's another aspect. They understand that there's nothing they did to get them into heaven. It wasn't because of the color of their skin that got them into the doors of heaven. It wasn't their political power that got them into the doors of heaven. It wasn't their economic power that got them into the doors of heaven. No, they understood that they were all sinners together. And the only reason they're able to stand around that throne is because the Lamb of God was shed upon them. The Lamb of God, his blood covered them, which means they were all desperate in need of one who would be their substitute. And the only chorus they could sing in heaven was a chorus to the one who got them in. Salvation belongs to God and to the Lamb. The question I ask you this morning is, how different would this world be if the church begins to have that same mindset? That as we look out at different ethnic groups, we look out at those sitting on the other side of the political table as us, that we don't see them as our enemy, but rather we see them as a fellow pilgrim on this world, a part of the fallen nature, sinners in need of a God who would pour out his mercy upon them. And my concern in today's culture is we're beginning to see a church beginning to say we're ready to fight. We're ready to fight. And the question I ask, who are you fighting? Who's this fight against? Because here's the thing, if we're called to make disciples of all nations, how willingly are you going to share your faith with your enemy? Rather, aren't we called to bless those who persecute us? Aren't we called to make friends with our enemies so that they could be our family members? Would we be able to look at people differently and saying, yes, we all got blind spots. We all are fallen creatures in need of a God to save us, and realizing that we're better together as the church of Jesus Christ. And I'm reminded of the story of G.K. Chesterton, and as he's looking at the story, an editor came up to him from the newspaper and said, "What's the problem with the world?" And Chesterton wrote back and said, "Dear sir, the problem with the world is me. It's my fallen heart. It's my sinful nature. And by the grace of God, God would pour out his mercy, love me so much, to transform my heart so that it would be inclined to him." But imagine if the church, instead of having this disposition of saying we're ready for a fight, but we're ready to to love. We're ready to bless our enemies, ready to befriend them, because that's the Jesus way. Again, we don't see the picture of the church with weapons. We see them with palm branches. And the message is going to be the way that the church begins to conquer in a world that's persecuting through them is by laying down our rights and being willing to sacrifice our bodies if we have to. But we're not going to change our disposition of love. That's the picture of the church. Different than what you might imagine it to be. I'm reminded of the news in 2070, there'll be 72% of Christians located in Africa and Asia and South America, which means the church majority is going to be a different skin color than us. Is that the picture of the church you see? Is that the picture of the church you want to belong to? Would we, like the Summit Church, say, whatever it takes? Whatever it takes. Willing to lay down our rights so this place can be full. Whatever it takes. Make some sacrifices in our worship because we want people of a different skin color to come in here and feel comfortable. Whatever it takes. Be willing to lay down our prejudice because we want people to come in here and feel loved, whatever it takes. Maybe even be willing to sacrifice places of leadership so other people can take them, whatever it takes. Because it's not about us. It's about the Lamb. Worthy. Worthy is the one who sits on the throne and to the Lamb because salvation belongs to him. God, we are thankful. We're thankful for the hope that you give us. God, sometimes we don't understand suffering, we don't understand pain. But we know that you are the one who are making all things new. Oh God, we can't wait for that day until we're in heaven. God, we call out, just like they did last week, how much longer? God, we want to be in your throne room, worshiping you for all that you've done. God, in the meantime, would you strengthen this church? Would you stir in our hearts to say whatever it takes? Because we want more and more people in more counties seeing the love of Jesus Christ. We want them to experience the hope that we have. We want them to be able to be in heaven worshiping with us, whatever it takes. God, so humble us in this place. That we would be one body singing one song, worthy is the Lamb that sits on the throne. Worthy are you, the one who saved our soul. So God, in a chorus, together we sing in unity, singing praises to the Son, the one who was slain on our behalf. Together we sing as the multi-ethnic and multi-culture. We sing whatever it takes because we want to offer our bodies as living sacrifices, giving our all for the sake of the gospel. Build your church.